What's going on YouTube? I'm back with another movie magic video. Today I'll be covering my favorite horror movie, Silent Hill. I love the games, but I never played any of them, and I love the soundtrack because I listen to it all the time. Anyways, let's get started. When the decision was made to adapt Silent Hill, Gaines and Hadida phoned screenwriter Roger Avery. They outlined their plans and offered to write a script. It's not so easy, Avery said. When you're going to film something, especially a game, you need to be ready to take everything apart and then put it together in a new way. The only thing that remains of the original material is the main idea, the concept, which all your actions are subordinated to. It was decided to combine in-game monsters with creatures invented by the film crew. Gaines tried to stick as close to the original source as possible, while Avery saw it as his main task to convey the spirit of the game. He kept some storylines and tried to combine the rest of the elements into new compositions. Thus, the director was more faithful to the creator's intention, and the screenwriter preferred to interpret the original material broadly. Since Gaines had already formed the concept of the future plot of the film, he sent the screenwriter several discs with atmospheric videos to point Avery's work in the right direction, as well as the developments complied by himself and Nicholas B. They were written in French, but the scriptwriter was required to translate them into English, write dialogues, and change a few conceptual factors. Avery did not limit himself to acquaintance with the presented film library and personally went through all entries of the game series. All changes by Avery were translated into Christophe's native language. A rough draft of the work was ready by October 2004. Nevertheless, due to the complete absence of male characters, the script was rejected by the producers. Only after the script was modified to include Sean Bean's character and subplot was it approved. Avery recalled that as soon as they received the stupid note from the studio, Gaines got angry. Yet later they realized that the storyline can be made interesting and emphasizes the peculiarities of the perception of reality. As a result, the plot became a combination of the first game with separate elements of the second and third. Gaines elaborated, "We were trying to put all three games into a 2-hour production. This is an adaptation of the first Silent Hill. However, there are so many interesting details in the following installments that it was impossible to resist." Avery used the town of Centralia, Pennsylvania, as a prototype for the town of Silent Hill. He commented that as a child, his father, who was a mining engineer, used to tell him stories about Centralia, where coal deposits from a local mine caught fire and released toxic gases into the town, as well as creating sinkholes when the abandoned mine shafts and coal seams began to collapse. This forced the town to evacuate forever. Avery was fascinated since his childhood by the idea that fires underneath the town would be burning for such a long time. The film acquired its working title in honor of the city, Centralia. Samuel Hadida tried to approach the writing of the script with the same feelings that arose during the gameplay of Silent Hill. The script also required the creation of a logical splicing between the various levels so that a person not familiar with the game could easily understand what was happening on screen. The creators were guided by the impressions of the fans, who suggested what impressed them more, what kept them in suspense, which characters seemed the most effective. At the heart of the plot, there is the search of a daughter, which leads the main character. Roger, like long dialogues, while Christophing preferred to shorten them as much as possible. In the end, they managed to achieve balance. Actions accounted for 30 pages in which Rose explores the world of Silent Hill. There were long debates over the ending. For the ending, Avery wanted to use the theme of forgiveness, while Gaines wanted to see a darker ending, the key message of which would be revenge. As a result, Avery gave up as he was convinced by the director's logical arguments. After taking the script, Radaha Mitchell, sorry I'm pronouncing that wrong, read only 10 pages of text. She was alone in her apartment, and by her own admission, she felt uncomfortable with fear. She finished reading it only a week later in the light of sun. Interesting. And said, that's what attracted me to the piece as well, because it was definitely a page turner, and it freaked me out. Sean Bean also found the plot scary. In contrast to these impressions, Gloria Holden liked the script. She deemed it spectacular, complex, multi-level with wonderful themes and therefore interesting to work with. Deborah Kara Unger called it Alice in the Wonderland meets Dante's Inferno, whatever that means. An integral part of the Silent Hill universe is the reality and unreality of the city. Silent Hill exists simultaneously in 4 different variations: the city of the 70s, Silent Hill in the present, Silent Hill in the fog, and Silent Hill in the darkness. According to executive producer Andrew Mason, Silent Hill is a story of what happens in the moments between death and fate. The film talks about people who deny their own fate and therefore fall into the trap of alternate dimensions. It deals with the terror of loneliness, the fear of the dark, the fear of taking responsibility for your own evil side, and the fear of your own fate. The game created a sense of constant threat, while the film seeks to reproduce that experience for a wider audience. The director noted that in the game, each character is very emotional and vulnerable, but at the same time, the characters were called flat and schematic. After they were put on paper, Gaines realized that the result was a failure. The actors represented more expansive and complex personas. So many of the characters were revamped. The filmmakers wanted all the characters in the film to appear gray and murky, as if they were in different dimensions, simultaneously. When selecting actors, Christophe paid attention to those who worked in independent cinema as they brought a different quality. The protagonist of the original video game is a man named Harry Mason. The director of the film made a significant departure from the original source and replaced the main character with a woman, Rose da Silva. Christophe and the writers suddenly realized that they were working with a completely feminine world. Gaines explained that if you look closely at the game and did not take into account the appearance, you can see that the characters behave more like women than like men. They are worried about the child, they are very sensitive and often cry. All this is stereotypical for mother characters. The whole movie is about motherhood. The director said he believed that in a sinister story, there must be a saving grace. This change, despite the fact that Gaines himself is a fan of the media franchise, did not bother him in the least, because the game is a game and the film is a film. Mitchell herself became interested in the project mainly because of Gaines' personality. She was deeply impressed by his previous film, Brotherhood of the Wolf. The executive producer of the film, Andrew Mason, noted that Mitchell had the freshness, energy, and joy of life necessary for the main character, who would lead the audience through a terrible world. Gaines characterized Mitchell as a sophisticated and elegant 60s-style actress, reminiscent of Gracie Kelly and Mia Farrow. Rada said that during filming, she had to run a lot around the set and shout out Sharon in 50 different ways. That's a lot. Also, during the filming process, her attitude towards the character changed. She stated that there is something feminist in the concept of the film, since all female characters are in some kind of fantasy world, while men are only in reality. For the main character, about 100 costumes were created. Each of was slightly darker than the previous one. In the beginning, Rose is dressed in very light dress, and in the end, in a bloody red dress, which symbolizes her evolution. Principal photography commenced on April 25th, 2005, and ended 3 months later on July 22nd. It took place in various locations in Canada, including Brantford, Hamilton, and Brampton in Ontario, Winnipeg and Manitoba, St. George and New Brunswick. I'm probably pronouncing all those wrong, but okay. As well as on sound stages in Toronto and on location in Alma College. The developers of the series, Team Silent, oversaw the entire production process of the film and collaborated closely with the production team, approving or rejecting decisions made by the director, screenwriter, and artist. As a result, the city's appearance was recreated with attention to the smallest details, down to errors in English names of the stores. The filming was done using a crane camera. The technology itself was improved to accurately simulate the operation of the virtual camera from the game. Mitchell had to tap into her own subconsciousness to enhance realism, including feelings of anxiety and pain in herself, to subsequently embody those emotions during the filming. She admitted that the encounters with the unknown were somewhat surreal. To depict fear, she asked the production designer to increase the volume of the sound made by the approaching monster through a microphone. This helped her act more interactive rather than just reacting to simple lines. The varying weather and conditions ranging from freezing cold to extreme heat did not have a negative effect on the actor's performance either. After delivering the film for film editing to the studio, Gaines expected to receive at least 10 pages of notes regarding the film's required editing. However, contrary to his expectations, the only comment was about the Australian accent of Mitchell and the English accent of Bean, which were too noticeable in 3 scenes of the film. According to him, the producers were shocked as they had never seen anything like it before. The next step was passing the censorship. Samuel Hadida was concerned about several scenes, especially the death of Sybil and the barbed wire killing of Christabella at the end, as well as Anna's flaying. The director said, "I wanted to create an unforgettable scene that shows a person being buried alive on a stake. I wanted to avoid using a mannequin instead of the actress." In the end, the committee provided documents marked as acceptable. This decision was supported by 3 reasons. The entire story takes place in a fictional world. The plot revolves around a woman trying to save her daughter, and the film hardly uses firearms. Subsequently, the film was banned for children under 15 in England and children under 12 in France. All work on the film was completed 10 days before its release in the US theaters. Silent Hill contains over 756 special effects shots. In total, 4 million was spent on them. The effects were produced by BUF Campaign, Mr. X Inc., and Core Digital Picture Studios. American studio Sony Pictures bought the distribution rights for $14 million for the United States and Latin America to be released under its TriStar Pictures drama film subsidiary. On December 5, 2005, TriStar announced a competition to create the best poster targeting fans of the series. This is interesting. I have never heard about this. Anyone could download several photos from the official website, welcometosilenthill.com, and use them as a basis to create the final image. Wow. All competition entries were posted on the internet on January 4, 2006, and a voting process took place. On January 17, specialists from the company selected 5 out of 50 works. On January 20, the finalists were announced, and 2 days later, the final version of the poster was chosen. Wow, I have never knew that. That's very interesting. The Japanese trailer of the film is voiced by Joe Romersa. Now to the music part, which I love the music and the soundtrack of the games and the movie. The composers of the film are Akira Yamaoka and Jeff Danham. The music for the film is borrowed from the soundtracks of the first 4 games in the series. The only track that does not belong to these albums is Johnny Cash's composition of Ring of Fire. Yamaoka mostly kept his own melodies intact as he wanted to maintain similarities to the game adaptation. The soundtrack, which included vocal tracks, was not released as a standalone release. Moving on to the technical part, the film in total lasts 127 minutes, according to information from several publications. There allegedly existed a director's cut of the film that was 3.5 hours long. That is way too long. But it was shortened by over 90 minutes at the instance of the producers, as distributors did not want to deal with a horror film of such length. Gaines also worked on creating a censored version of the film, which lasts less than 80 minutes. However, according to him, it will never be shown to the public. The director had no control over the release of the film outside of the home region. He referred to the DVD version of the film released in America as pitiful. What? Citing the claustrophobic quality of compression. He spent 80 days 8 days optimizing the rendering and color grading of the release in the second region. The film was shot in Super 35 film format, except the scenes with the darkness, which were filmed in high definition video, because of its ability to cleanly capture light and digitally manipulate it in post production. The film contains around 107 different sets, especially used to represent the different versions of the town. The bipedal creatures in the film were played by professional actors or dancers covered in latex and prosthetic makeup. After filming, over 619 visual effects shots were used in the film, with the most prominent uses being the fog that drenches the town, the transitions to darkness, and the insects that surround Pyramid Head. Rotoscoping was used to add the fog and ash effects to shots, including live action actors, and the film made extensive use of set extensions as backdrops. To maintain the feel of the games, Gaines had the sound designer of the original Silent Hill, which is Akira Yamaoka, flown to the set several times. Additionally, Gaines had a 40-inch television brought onto the set, which he attached a PlayStation 2. Gaines then played the original Silent Hill on the same system so that actors and cinematographers could see how Gaines wanted to emulate the various camera angles and movements. That is so funny and interesting. They're just like using the reference. They're using the original game to reference. That's crazy. That's a wrap on today's video. I had fun learning about the making of the movie and telling you all about it. This is probably my most challenging movie magic video to make because it was a lot of information I had to cut out. And I'll leave a link to the information in my description. Whether you hate it or love it, Silent Hill still remains as the most iconic game series and movie, except for the sequel, which is trash. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.